Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, you know, conceived in liberty, dedicated to the proper plus the designated driver.
That's the babysitter. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Couple Guinnesses there.
Yeah.
Set to start.
Set to start.
Rolling.
We're good? All right. Talk about being, because it's such a beautiful day, sitting here in LA. How often you come out here? You lived here for a little while.
I lived here I lived in LA for 5 years on and off. I really loved living in LA. I think if I had been like a teenager, like really single and working the scene, it might have driven me crazy. But you know, I had a couple of girlfriends, and I had like the not at once, just one at a time. I had some friends, so it was a good scene for me. I didn't find all of the cliches about LA to be really true.
Yeah. And what's it to you now in terms of work? Because you're out here, you're playing a lot, and I don't know how much recording you've done out here, but you come out here quite often.
Now that I don't pay rent in LA, my main home is Largo, a little club in Hollywood, on Fairfax, and it's, you know, John Bryan and Flanagan, the owner, and all the comedians that go up there, and it's great. It's like, it's really, that's where I hang out whenever I'm in town. And so, although when I come out to promote a record, they keep me too busy to hang out, sadly.
Yeah.
But I love it. I really love coming back to LA. And I mean, obviously the weather. Now I live just north of Manhattan in the Hudson Valley, so the weather's a little sketchy. Having grown up in Texas, I'm not used to all the snow.
Right.
But you know, there's good stuff about it. You go, you know, skiing and sledding and make snow angels, snowball fights.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Talk about this record and how you approached this one, because last one there was a big deal. There's a lot of them. I know there was some emotion involved, at least, being a new thing. All that besides you, how'd this one kind of feel putting it together?
When I was making The Instigator, I was sort of caught up in, you know, what would the old 97s think about it, and what would our fan base think about it, and because it was really the first time I'd done anything apart from the band in 10 years. And this time around, it was just me. And the 97s were really cool about it, and I played them some stuff as it went, but I didn't by any means feel like I had to send them mixes as I was working, or, you know, get their approval on things. But they've all given me a lot of support this time around. And I think the fans, once they saw that the 97s weren't going to become a casualty of my ego or something, were really cool about letting me have this solo career as well as the 97s career. And if I'm lucky, and I think that we may be able to do this, the 97s could keep going, like until 2060 or something. I mean, we'll see, but I'm thinking it could be a good long run for the band. And the thing that'll make it possible is that I also get to do this solo stuff.
Mm-hmm. Was there a sense of trying to actually this last year kind of prove that in spades, that the band hasn't gone away with all the live stuff that came out and the touring schedule that's been nonstop? That you guys are really still more than vital.
Yeah, after The Instigator, there was a lot of old 97s action, and it was to prove, I guess, to the fans and the band as well, you know, that we could still pull it off. And it felt good. It really felt good. I mean, all the trepidation that had existed vanished when we realized, oh, you know what, the solo career can do nothing but help the band career. And it's not a normal thing for a singer to go off and do solo stuff and let the band stay together, but it seems to be working. Knock wood.
You guys were literally playing just a matter of weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
So, is it feel like is there like a demarcation transition into this new year now, where you're letting that go for a little while? Is that kind of put to bed?
I knew that 2006 would be more about Rhett Miller than about the old 97s, and they're okay with that. You know, two of the guys, the two, Philip and Ken, that still live in Texas, they've got a couple of kids each, and they stay home with their kids during the days, and I think they love getting to, you know, be dads and really get to see their kids grow up. And those guys were a couple to a few years older than me to begin with, which is part of the reason the 97s always worked, because they had sown a lot of their oats. And so, you know, they're pretty happy to be at home. I've always had a little bit more of an itch to scratch than those guys. Like, I always needed a little bit more of getting out and being in the scene and, you know, working and working and working. And so it looks like this is going to work. I mean, knock wood, but...
Yeah. How'd you challenge yourself with this one to make it new and fresh, not do the same record you did last time?
It wasn't hard to make this a new event for me, this record, because the instigator going in, I had just fled New York. You know, we lived right by the World Trade Center when 9/11 happened, and we fled as the second tower was collapsing, my wife and I, and, you know, we never got to spend another night in our place, and it was a month later I was in the studio making a record, so it wasn't like it wasn't like I really had my head completely in the recording. It was a little bit crazy, and so I gave up a lot of the onus of making the album to John Bryan, which I had known I wanted to do because I wanted John, to make his record, as well as my record. And so, going in to make The Believer, I didn't have that kind of baggage. I knew that this was my chance, to be the boss and to really call all the shots. And so, writing the songs, I had a batch of songs I was really proud of. And then before we went in, I went back in and wrote, like 5 or 6 songs that were all better than the 5 or 6 songs on the bottom of the list of the songs I had. So it was like, or they were, some of them, Brand New Way, my favorite song on the record, was sort of a last minute addition, and it was, it's just like, it was kind of a milestone for me. It was musically, it was a sort of a tougher, more intricate song, and lyrically, it contained some of the lines of which I'm most proud on the whole album. There's a lyric about, I'll come over to cushion your breakables, and that's kind of where I want to be as a songwriter, where you can have these lines that sound kind of like throwaway come-ons, but they, to me at least anyway, they work on a couple of levels. So
you talk about that because some of your songs I know you've lived with for a while, and some, like you just said, how important is that to you to have that very mix? So some of you kind of like, even part of like songwriter workshops and things, or songs played at Largo for years. Talk about kind of that dichotomy, how long a song could live with you. What's the oldest song on this record?
There's a couple of songs on The Believer that have been around for a few years. There's Fireflies, the duet, and Singular Girl, both of which are the two that sound most like they could be old 97's tunes, because they have kind of a swingy thing, or a waltz in the case of Fireflies. And I wrote them both, a few years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and the band said no, which is the nature of a democracy. They all get a veto and they get to do what they want, and that's fine.
But that's for your solo record, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah, they would. Yeah, I would say that. They would turn it down. I would say, you don't understand. Singular Girl is such a great song. People are gonna love this song. Oh man, I don't like it. It shouldn't be on the record. So that's when I would say, well, that's why I have to make a solo record someday, guys. So so those songs have been around for a while, but then other than that, I felt like I was really coming into my own the couple of years leading up to this, and writing songs. Sorry, should I wait for the dog?
Yeah, now that he's really barking. Unless you want to just turn around and just go, oh, quiet, Sparky. Like your dog.
Yeah. So yeah, I did have a couple of years in between the Instigator and the Believer to write songs, and the 97s did a studio album and a double live album, but I've been hoarding away these songs that I really thought were important to me, because I knew that this record was, I knew it was like, it was a big record for me. The Instigator sort of established me as a solo artist apart from the 97s, and then this was my chance to really prove a point, that there's a reason I have a solo career. And I felt like it worked. I really feel like I've kind of accomplished making this record that's pretty broad in scope sonically, and really exactly where I want it to be lyrically. So we'll see.
Has the whole experience been kind of the most satisfying experience for you musically? How do you compare it to some of the times with the band, or is it a whole different world when you look at things that way?
For the horns.
Yeah. Where else?
Every record is very different, So working with the 97s, there's a lot less pressure for me, every day on a day-to-day basis, because I know they do their thing. For me, there was more pressure on this record, and in a way, it wasn't as like easygoing and fun as a lot of the records I've made, but that was a good thing because I had to be there. And one of the reasons was that George Drakulius, the producer, who's a pretty famous and crazy producer. He's a loon. So we had to fight to make the record a little bit. Like he and I, because George Drakulius is not a musician per se. He's not techie. He's his power is in his opinions. His power is in his ears. So that's his thing. He sits there and says, "That doesn't sound good." I'll say, "No, I think it does sound good." Or he'll go, or I'll say, "I don't really like that." He'll go, "No, that's what you want. You like that." "Oh, I don't." So it was really like a wrestling match, and I love George, and he and I are going to be friends, I think, for as long as I live. But, dude, it was a battle every single day. So it wasn't like I got to kick back and and just relax. You know, there wasn't a, there was it was a lot of sobriety. I'll put it that way. More so than any record I've ever been involved with. I was there. I was present for every single day because there were battles every day, and I had to at least, you know, if not win them, I had to at least feel good about losing them. You know.
And he brought, I don't know, did he bring Gary to the table, or some people he's worked with before, or how close were you with some of these people that you brought into the record to collaborate with you?
The cast on the record is phenomenal. I mean, yeah, Gary Loris was somebody that that had worked with George Drakulius a lot. You know, George did all the Jayhawks records, or a lot of the Jayhawks records, and but I've been a huge fan of Gary's, especially his voice. I mean, I love his songwriting and his records, but his voice is epic. I mean, it's so beautiful, and his harmonies are so natural. So to have him come in, and really, it was in a matter of 2 days we recorded all his harmonies, and it was 14 hours at a time with him never walking away from the microphone. And oh my God, we worked him so hard that by the end of the second day, he was practically crying, and he was saying, "George, no more." And George was like, "No, there's one more little part I could get you to do." And Gary was like, "No, dude, that is it. It's really it." And then actually, after he'd convinced us that really was it, we still made him play a guitar solo. We're like, "Well, you know, your voice is fried, but you can still play the guitar solo on I Believe She's Lying." And then we also had, you know, on the record, there's Lyle Workman, who is, you know, a pretty famous sort of session guy who played in Beck's band for a long time, but he's played on a lot of people's records. And he was the only guy I didn't really know going in. And but I'd heard his stuff a lot, obviously, with Frank Black's solo records, and so I knew Lyle was going to be good. You know, I knew that he could do everything. So it was just a matter of sort of talking to him enough to where he understood, you know, what I liked and what I wanted. And once that was done, it was just so easy. The guy's, you know, the connection between his brain and his fingertips is, you know, is very short. So there's him, and then Salim Narala, the bass player, is a friend of mine from Dallas who played in the Instigators, the band that toured the last record I had. And Salim's great. I sort of brought him out and convinced George that he would be a good bass player because I knew that Salim would help me sort of, you know, Salim would be my ears in addition to my ears, you know, because, like I said, there was something very adversarial about the working relationship with George while we were in, so I needed somebody on my team in there.
Right.
And then the drummer, Matt Chamberlain, is potentially the best drummer in the world, you know, I met him when I met him years ago when he played with Edie Brickell and New Bohemians, and then he was in Pearl Jam after that, and then we toured together with Tori Amos. I opened for her for like 2 or 3 months, and Matt was her drummer. And she doesn't hang out with her band so much, so I was sort of the Ursat's lead singer on the tour bus. We would all stay up late and, you know, hang out together, and so it was great. I knew I would get along with Matt already, and the cool thing about that was that Matt is this monster rock and roll drummer, and I didn't, you know, most people get him to play kind of soft, like he played the John Mayer record, you know, and it's pretty soft stuff, and I made him play like a caveman, and I think he was grateful for it too, because it's very natural to him. He likes it, just nobody ever pays him to do that, so I did.
So now that you're real proud of this record and it came out obviously the way you wanted it to, how much pressure in terms of success? And you guys you've done well with the last record, and the band has had, you know, a lot of success. But how much pressure is there to even top that? What are your hopes and dreams in terms of what this record will accomplish?
I've put out a lot of records, you know, so my expectations have become more realistic, but my dreams have never gotten any smaller. You know, I want to have a huge record that millions of people own, and I want to be able to, you know, be spoken of in the same breath as the people whom I've always admired, you know, the David Bowies and the Bob Dylans. And the fact that it is a weird time in our industry and in the world of information, which is so funny that music just became more information, you know, like it's, you know, just numbers or letters or something. But it's okay, you know, that you can't really control the age in which you live, and I'm excited. I think I have as good a chance as anybody else, and I think that there's a movement towards a more democratic, no, even a more communist sort of industry, you know, where quality prevails over the company shoving things down the throat of the consumer. You know, with things like MySpace and things like, you know, just downloading in general, people can get music and people can talk about music on the internet in a way that they never could before. So instead of just having a few things laid out in front of you in the record store, you've got everything that's available right there at your fingertips. And, you know, that's why that's why I hope that something like The Believer is gonna, stand a chance in a world where, I Am Me by Ashley Simpson sells jillions of records. Not that it's evil. I mean, the world needs that kind of pop, I guess, but maybe we can try and make it a little bit of a better place. Quality,
Right.
quality.
And all the new fans that come out and pick up this record over the course of the next couple months, are they going to be hearing a different Rhett thematically, or different things you're talking about now that family life has affected you differently? Is it a different record in terms of that kind of thing?
This record runs the scope. I mean, there's still some of that heartbroken drunk, from my early days, just because that guy's always going to be inside of me. And then there's, I think the closest I get to being like a happy dad is a song like Brand New Way. But even that, I mean, that's just like that's sort of a won't you come to bed with me. It's not really like, oh God, I'm so happy sitting on my couch drinking tea, It's more like a, please take off your clothes, Let's make some babies, sort of a thing.
The seducer hasn't left you.
The Seducer. That's the next record.
The seducer.
The Instigator, The Believer, The Seducer.
Right.
Nice.
Right.
That'll be all lounge music,
Right. How much, after this coming out this last tour, how much is that female kind of screaming fan base still a fun part of what you do?
Well, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't love seeing a front row filled with cute girls. I'm a happily married man, but I'm still a man, right? And but I consciously made an effort to put a band together that would represent some female musicianship, and I've got a really fantastic drummer named Angela Webster, who's a really powerful woman. And I think that if there are 15 to 22-year-old girls in the front row, they're going to be inspired, man. They're going to watch her drum and they're going to think, geez, I need to start a band, and that's got to be good, right? More chicks rocking. Come on.
What does the year hold for you in terms of what you're going to be up to in terms of touring and any other collaborations or fun things you have planned?
The record comes out into February, and in March I'll get to play South by Southwest on a big bill with the Pretenders, which I'm very excited about. And then I'll start off a tour for a solid 5 weeks with this new band I've put together, and then I'll take a month off because my wife will have a baby. And then I'll go back on the road around June, which is the same time the Breakup comes out, the Vince Vaughn, Jennifer Aniston movie that the old 97s are prominently featured in.
Yeah, tell me about it. How does that work? What can we expect?
The Breakup is, it's like a romantic comedy, Vince Vaughn, Jennifer Aniston, and the big penultimate scene takes place at an old 97s concert, which I would never really call it a concert, but in the Hollywood terminology, it's definitely it's definitely a concert, And it was filmed in Chicago at the Riviera Theater, beautiful old theater, 1,200 fans that they brought in. And basically Jen sits in the front row of the balcony and waits for Vince's character to show up. And it's like, I don't know if I should ruin the ending for you, but let's just say she's crying at a certain point. I'm singing, she's crying, we're together, we're acting. But according to Vince, we had a solid 7 minutes in the most recent edit. So I don't know, it's going to be kind of interesting to see how all of my friends burn up my phone line saying, dude, I can't believe you're in this movie.
Vince has been a friend of the band for a long time, right?
One of the funny things about The Breakup is that we play the song Time Bomb in the movie, which was the opening credits track to a Vince Vaughn film from almost 10 years ago called Clay Pigeons. So it's like the same song over a 10-year span, and I look exactly the same. Isn't that weird? I don't. I can't do that.
Yeah, you kind of do. Is that kind of thing where, I don't know, have you been in other films? Has the band been in other films? Is that something that could branch off into a whole other realm of career possibilities?
I've thought about acting a lot. It's come up a lot. I got asked to audition. Actually, got asked to audition for Fight Club years ago. I would have been the Jared Leto guy, the guy that gets beat up. Really, I guess they all get beat up, right? But I was on tour, and that's been the problem with me and acting. It's come up a lot. It's something I think I could do. I've actually done recently some auditions again, and I mean, it's not my first thing by any means, but if it came up and if it worked, it'd be fun, I don't think it's that far a cry from standing on stage in front of people and, being me. As long as, one of the auditions I did, I had to have an Irish accent. That was rough. That was a little rough. I mean,
to work with Flanagan on that?
yeah, I did actually. I spent a lot of time on the phone with Flanagan from Largo, and he's like, "Oh no, that's Dublin." I was like, "Oh God, okay." That's a lot. I don't know, man. Maybe I got to start off with maybe a kid that grew up in Texas playing guitar.
There you go. All right, man.
Thanks, Adam. Very
Very
cool.
cool. Thank you.
So, a couple of songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, Adam, you good? Just give me a...
Holly Wally Doodle all day. Right now.
Stay out for this, or you want to go in?
Holly Wally Doodle all day. Holly Wally Doodle all day.
Alright, we're rolling.
Nice.
Should we have an intro it?
He doesn't need to.
Okay.
Whatever you do normally.
All right. We good? Rolling?
Anytime.
Help me, Suzanne, I got to figure it out while the whites of my eyes are red. What I wouldn't give for a bed or a fire or a phone. Who could I call or what would I say? I've been working all week for you. Where would I go to even if I could go home? I've been living on the memory of a dream I once had. You gave me the reason for feeling like I do. You gave me the reason, I'd like to thank you. Help me, Suzanne, I got to set my sights on a bright, sunshiny day. 'Cause my whole world's gone gray and it's going wrong. You got a big heartbeat and a body of work. You could do me a world of good. Yeah, you could and you did, and I'm begging you to keep on. I've been living on the memory of a dream I once had. You gave me the reason for feeling like I do. You gave me the reason, I'd like to thank you. I had lost my way, like I always do. You gave me the reason, I'd like to thank you. Oh. I've been living on the memory of a dream I once had. You gave me the reason for feeling like I do. You gave me the reason, I'd like to thank you. I had lost my hand, I had come unglued. You gave me the reason, I'd like to thank you. 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 Cool. So, that's probably good, right?
Yeah, that's great.
Do Brand New Way?
Only because maybe it does get referenced.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, and it's good acoustic. There's some that aren't as, that are tougher. All right, still rolling?
The 559.
Okay. All right. And you are strong, all the barriers are gone. Let it carry us somewhere unreachable. I would never hurt you, baby. My virtue has proven itself unimpeachable. Let's just say there are those long days. There is this dumb look. There is a brand new way opening up. Streets, buildings and cars, faraway stars. My fingers move over the borderline, breathe. And you're the stranger, there is no danger you'll fall into that rogue right hand of mine. Let's just say there are those long days. There is this dumb luck. There is a brand new way opening up. Skin all over you. I am a warrior, it's true. I came over to cushion your breakables. Breathe, and you are stronger. You don't have to wander. You know my conviction's unshakable. Let's just say there are those long days. There is this dumb luck. There is a brand new way opening up. There are these long nights. There is this good love. There is a brand new way opening up. Opening up. Opening up. Opening up. Yeah. All right.
All right.
Cool. No broken strings.